I have been talking the entire time and didn't realize that I was muted. Good morning, soon to be afternoon. My name is Natasha Robinson, and I am the creator and curator of Legaleaze, Please. I am so very happy that you are here. I am going to just give you a couple of moments to come in to bring your lunch or snack or beverage, or if you just want to relax, you can do that. I am going to do the heavy lifting in the sense that I am going to be presenting on what's the 411 on criminal law. I am going to be discussing several issues as it relates to criminal law. I'm going to focus, however, on the state level. All right, so in our country, we have a federal criminal system and we have a state criminal system. And so I am going to be focusing on the state level. More importantly, I am going to be focusing on Illinois because that is the state in which I live and where I have been licensed for, let's see, how many years now? Let's see. I was sworn into the bar in Wisconsin and then Illinois. So in November of this year, I will be licensed. Let's see, carry the one for 22 years. Okay, 22 years. I am retired, technically. I could go into a criminal courtroom and represent someone. However, instead of practicing law, I am teaching it. All right. So anyway, what I was going to say is that Illinois is going to be the focus for our discussion. So I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes. I'm going to greet everyone as they come into the room. Let me switch to Facebook Live and see if there's anyone here, because whether you were here or not, I am still happy to be here, happy to be your leader and your professor in this space. So when you come in, do like, your big mama or your family members will tell you. When you come in, you make sure you just say hi. Just say hi in the comments, and I will make sure to see those comments. Okay, we have 2 minutes, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started, whether it is just myself and the ancestors, or whether it is with me and you. I'm glad to be here. Just by way of background, Legaleaze, Please is a digital space that centers our focus around the decoding, demystifying, and deconstruction of legal language, which is to say that there are many times where those who are involved in the criminal legal system in the United States, they are disenfranchised and they are dismissed by way of understanding legal language. And so Legaleaze, Legalease, is basically shop talk. It's where legal professionals are able to communicate with each other in a way where those who are non-legal professionals may not understand. The problem is that when it is time to understand, it is time to explain and comprehend, those who are in the criminal legal system, whether it be the defendants, the witness, or the victims, or even the family members who are sitting in the well of the courtroom, they may not be able to hear or understand what is being discussed as it relates to their loved ones. And so as a result, that can bring a lot of frustration on top of the already anxiety and frustration of being in the system, understanding why do I have to sit so long before my loved one is brought out of custody, or why does it take so long for my case to be called? There are a lot of different nuances that are involved, but what is equally as frustrating is finally seeing your loved one, if they are in custody, or being the victim or being the witness and having a lot of information being passed back and forth, and no one is explaining to you what these terms mean. And sometimes when they are explained, they're explained in kind of like a huff, like a, why don't you know this already? And in this type of system, there's enough enough outcome, enough weight that is present. And what we don't want is shame or embarrassment to also be a part of this process, because it is stressful enough. And so anyway, legalese please. Now I'm talking about here. Legalese please, Legaleaze, is designed to provide ease to the understanding and the comprehension of legal language, specifically for criminal law. That is the area in which I specialize in. There will be times when we will go into civil law. So the difference between criminal law and civil law is criminal law is about whether or not someone's rights or liberties are taken away. Their rights or their liberty to be able to be free to move about without any constraint. That is whether or not, if a person is found guilty of violating a criminal law, then the issue becomes what punishment, if any, should the person have. Okay. Civil law, however, is designed for more so what happens when a person is accused of civil violations, such as they are suing because they're saying there is some type of civil violation, either because of negligence or an intentional tort, which is a civil wrongdoing. And as a resort, they want to sue someone to get penalties, to get what do you call it? Damages. Okay. And so you have compensatory damages. This is where someone is paying out of pocket for x-rays or funeral home costs or therapy. You also have nominal damages, which are, the little bitty damages is self-explanatory, nominal. And then you have punitive damages, where a court tells someone, look, you have to stop doing something, or you have to start doing something. And that can be by way of injunctive, of relief, or it can be by way of paying of damages and saying that we are now making an example of the defendant by making them do something. Them could be a person, or it could be an it, as in a corporation. Or you can say, now, not only we're going to make them example of what not to do, we're going to make an example of what to do. So from now on, we're going to try and prevent corporate defendants from doing this type of illegality or type of tort. Okay. And so what happens is that is the civil side. That's civil language. Even in my description, there is still a lot embedded in terms. However, in criminal law, there is a lot embedded in the terms. And so this space is designed to explain different things. I do not presume that you know everything or anything. Well, no one really knows anything. But I'm going to share with you the things that I have learned, the things that I teach to people when I go speak, or when I do a consultation, or when I'm talking to students. Okay, so as I said before, if you are here, then just put your name in the comment section, or you can say, hey, how you doing? Or you can just be quiet. Okay, it's totally up to you. But what I want to do before I begin, the last time I was here, I highlighted a Black business. And so I want to do that again. This time I am highlighting the business of my good buddy and sis, attorney April Preyar, Preyar. And we both started in the law office of the Cook County Public Defender. And when we did that, we were assigned to different locations and then eventually went on to do different things. And so she is, I would say, a national seller of her good work. She has created this board game that is called Trials and Triumphs, and it has been featured on everything. And when I tell you everything, I mean everything. Just last night, she was featured on NBC5 here in Chicago, and then this month, she has been interviewed by Essence Magazine, not once, but twice. So this time, I just wanted to bring attention to her board game. It is so important that we inform each other, young people in particular, about the criminal justice system, and more importantly, what happens if you are arrested or if you are stopped by police. And so I want to share with you my screen that allows you to hear from her herself what this board game is about. All right, so I'm just going to play this for you, and then we will get started with our episode.
What's up? What's up? This is April Prayer, criminal defense attorney from Chicago. I go by the Justice Junkie, and I've been practicing law for 20 years and have represented thousands of clients, and I've been doing criminal defense the entire time. So I used all that information and poured it first into videos and made it accessible on Facebook, and then I realized that I wasn't reaching everybody doing it that way, so I developed a board game. The board game is called Trials and Triumphs. And what it does is it gives you 54 different real life scenarios that you can find yourself in 5 minutes after playing. And you know immediately what to do simply because you learned it in a fun and interactive way. So the board game actually walks you through two different worlds: the world of trouble, and that's the world of being stuck in jail and trying to bond out and having to go to court. And then the world of possibilities, where you walk through graduating high school, you own your first business, you get married, you buy a puppy, your computer dies, the ups and downs of life. And along the way, those flashing lights are what will trip you up. So this is the most revolutionary tool on the market, and I'm just trying to get the word out to as many people as possible so that we can save lives, save people from losing their lives to jail and prison, save people from losing their lives on the side of the road to police officers, and help everybody make it home safely. So get your copy of Trials and Triumph board game today. Thousands of people have already been touched by the game. Their lives have been changed, and they are now ambassadors to run out and help others stay safe and make it home. Peace.
All right, so that is April Prayer and Justice Junkie. You would like to purchase a copy, you can go to justusjunkie.store, and we will be able to have those games for you. I tell you, it's a phenomenal game. It is a life changer. So if you are able to purchase that, please do, and support Attorney Prayer as well as support your loved ones. Okay, so now what I am going to do is I am going to share my screen, and then we will get started with today's presentation. And let me move all of these floating controls, and we are going to go ahead and get started. So today, I'm going to give you, hopefully in a little under an hour, probably about an hour, an overview of the United States criminal justice system at the state level. All right, so this is called Let's Get Criminal. And I'm dating myself because there used to be a song in the 80s, and it was called Let's Get Physical. And it was a song of movement, a song of empowerment, where it was telling people, let's get physical. I remember that as a little girl growing up. And so that refrain stuck in my mind when we talked about Let's Get Criminal. Okay, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. I am not, as I said earlier, I am not going to be talking about the federal criminal system. I am going to be talking about the state criminal system. So there may be some things that I discussed that may be different in your particular state or territory or district. So make sure that you double check and do your due diligence with your particular state. I'm going to be using the state of Illinois because that is where I reside. So here are our learning targets for today. By the end of class, yes, I call it a class. By the end of class, we should be able to do the following. That does not mean that after today, if you can't do it, you are inept or you are did not retain the information. It's just simply saying that today begins a process, and it begins a process of empowering yourself with information. So these are the 5 learning targets for today. The first learning target is to articulate the 3 main components of the criminal justice system. We're going to understand the sources from which criminal law originate. We're going to differentiate between morality and legality of our criminal justice system. So what is the difference between morality and legality? We're going to identify the elements of a crime, and we're going to explain the different types and categories of crime. And we're going to do all of that in a very short period. So even if you're not able to watch the entirety of this recording, don't worry, I have this posted on my Facebook personal page, the Legaleaze page, and because Zoom does not allow dual streaming opportunities, I will be posting this and uploading this to the YouTube Legaleaze page, which I need you to subscribe to, all right? And I'll have that information at the end of the presentation. Okay, so even though we are in a virtual space, if we were in a classroom space, I would still say to my students that you are safe here, which means that although we may be discussing some things which may be problematic or it may bring up particular feelings or remembrances or occurrences, please understand that the information that we discuss here is not to expose or to embarrass. It is only to empower and to educate, all right? So if there is anything that brings up, you know, a type of memory or it's traumatic to listen to, by all means, you know, please, first of all, talk to someone who is a professional who may be able to assist you, and then understand that you can leave and come back at any time. So what is criminal justice? There are a lot of words that come to people's minds when they hear the words or the term criminal justice. They think of social justice, they think of lawyer, they think of litigation, they think of courtroom, they think of jail, they think of prison, they think of Law and Order SVU with Detective Benson. When you got the dun-dun, you know, they think of all of these things. We think of all of these things. And so it is both and. It is both all of these words that you see on this word cloud. It can be punishment, it can be equality, it can be legality, freedom, society, and it is other things. And so my job here is to unpack what criminal law is in the realm of criminal justice, so I can make different terms a little bit more tangible and a little bit more understandable for you on today. So what comprises the United States criminal justice system? I'm glad you asked. There are 3 components, 3 main components. First, we have law enforcement. That can be anywhere from localized police, which if you live in Chicago, it would be the Chicago Police Department, or if you lived in any village or any type of town, that would be law enforcement. You also have to consider law enforcement on the federal level, which would be Homeland Security, or I would classify them as law enforcement too, is TSA. Those would be the agents that would be standing at the airport and making sure that things go through security and that there is nothing that is inappropriate that is going considered to be law enforcement. But when we talk about the criminal justice system, the first component is law enforcement. All right, the second component is the court system. That is where once you have been arrested and charged with a crime, this is the tribunal. This is the location where there is a determination at some point whether you are legally guilty or legally not guilty. Okay, and I say legally guilty because there's a difference between factual guilt and legal guilt. Factual guilt is where you have all of the information that shows how a person could be guilty. Legal guilt, however, is the result of filters of motions and laws and protocols, which say even though you have this information, if it does not go through the filter of legal process, that is, if you obtain something illegally from someone, that cannot be used even though they had it for real. When we look at the court system, we are looking to see whether a person is going to plead guilty or whether they are going to be found guilty. If you plead guilty, then you do not have a trial. But if you want to plead not guilty, you can have two types of trials. You can have either one, a jury trial, which is your constitutional right, which you get 12 persons from the community to listen to the evidence and to apply the evidence to the law and come up with a verdict, a unanimous verdict of guilty or not guilty. That's the first type of trial you can have. That is your constitutional right. Whether you have money or not, you have a constitutional right to a trial by jury. If instead you wish the judge to decide guilt or innocence, that is called a bench trial. And what happens is when you go into court, you and your attorney, actually it's your attorney, it's you in the state of Illinois, you sign what's called a jury waiver, meaning you are waiving, you are surrendering, you are giving up your constitutional right to a trial by jury because you want a judge to decide your legal outcome. All right, that's the second component. The third component is the correction system. The correction system, of course, we imagine is where a person is in jail or in prison. But what often we do not consider is anyone who is under the correctional control of a state falls under the correction system. That includes the millions of people who are on probation, the millions of people who are on parole, and the millions of people who I would argue that they report to pretrial, although they are not limited in their movement permanently, or at least temporarily, they do have to report to pretrial services, which is a part of the probation department. So there you have it. Those are the three components of the criminal justice system: law enforcement, the courts, and corrections. Now, where does criminal law come from? So again, dating myself, if you've ever watched the 10 Commandments on what people observe as a day called Easter, then you know that usually Channel 7, ABC will show the 10 Commandments, and this is Moses, aka Charlton Heston, aka deceased, aka the former president of the National Rifle Association. That was his real job. This is his job as an actor. Okay, and so when we're talking about laws, which you have to go to your pastor, your preacher, or your researcher to understand that there are more than 10 commandments. There are more than 10 laws, but I'm not a theologian, so I'm not going to talk about that. When we talk about criminal law, there are at least 3 sources from which criminal law come, where they derive. Written law, which is statutes written by lawmakers. So when you are in court or when you are reading the news and someone gets upset at an attorney or a police officer or a judge and say, well, why this is so ridiculous? Why is this law written this way? You're looking at the wrong people, okay? While you can hold those professionals accountable, where you really need to start looking at is the lawmakers, okay? In Illinois, that would be Springfield. You'd be looking at the Illinois General Assembly. And if you've ever owned Schoolhouse Rock, then it has a song, I'm Just a Bill. Okay, in order for a law to be a law, it first has to be a bill. That is the best time which you want to attack whatever it is that you feel is going to be illegal or inequitably applied. okay? A law by that time is a little bit more permanent, but when it's a bill, that's when you are able to try and see how you can put your input in or try to object to what is being presented. And so what happens is that every year there are sessions for the General Assembly. So I would say start paying attention to what is being discussed before it becomes a law. Start paying attention. But written law, that's where criminal law comes from. So your statutes telling you you're not supposed to punch somebody, a DUI in terms of classifying that as a misdemeanor or a felony, the length of time in which a person can be punished. All of that starts in written law with the lawmakers, okay? The second source of criminal law is common law. That involves cases decided by the judiciary, the judges. So for example, in this country, segregation was legalized. Those who were African-American, when they would get on a bus, when they would go to a theater, when they would go to a church, when they would walk down the street, segregation was considered to be legal. So they had to be segregated because of their race, because of the color of their skin. Well, in 1954, there was a United States Supreme Court case called Brown versus Board of Education, which stated that segregation was unconstitutional. And as a result, all of the places that I named could no longer segregate or engage in racism through systematic racism. So that was a common law. That was a common law that came down as a result of the United States Supreme Court case, Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, and then Brown versus Board of Education Part 2 in 1955. All right. And if you want to know more about that, do your research. And then lastly, criminal law can come from executive orders or referenda. So if a village puts on its ballot that there is a referendum that they want people to vote for or vote against, then whatever is the outcome of that vote can become criminal law if it involves a criminal topic. Okay, now we are going to switch from talking about the sources of criminal law and the components of criminal justice system. And I want us to just pause for a moment. When I was a little girl, and I was a member of my church, shout out Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago. I was at the 532 West 95th Street building. And at that building at that time, you had Dr. Jeremiah Wright, who was the senior pastor. He would have speakers that would come in and they would lecture during Black History Month as well as other months in the year. And this was one of the people that I saw, Dr. William Augustus Jones, who at this time as a little girl, I know who he is, but I don't know who he is, okay? And so he gave a lecture in Trinity United Church of Christ that was based upon his book, God in the Ghetto, which was published in 1979. Okay, fast forward to the 21st century, where I am a criminal justice professor, and I remember as a little girl, what Dr. Jones said that was talking about how we set up our society. And so, of course, I go to Dr. Wright, my dad, and at the time I was a master's student and I needed to put this quote into my paper. However, the book cost, I think, like $5,000. And so I knew that there was one person who had an original copy. And so because I'm a book nerd to a walking genius, I say, hey, can I borrow this book? Of course, he said no. He gave me some more choice words. And then I said, well, what if I quote you quoting Dr. William Augustus Jones? And he said, okay. And so now I am showing you the quote that actually was included in Reverend Dr. Susan Williams Smith, who is also a person who was a minister that I grew up under. Because she was a staff minister at Trinity as well. She wrote a book in 2014, and it is called The Book of Jeremiah, The Life and Ministry of Reverend Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright Jr. However, Dr. Wright is not the focus per se of this quote. He is simply synthesizing the original understanding and outcomes that Dr. William Augustus Jones articulates in his book. And here it is, quote, this is Dr. Wright speaking. Dr. Jones, in his book, God in the Ghetto, argues quite accurately that one's theology, how I see God, determines one's anthropology, how I see humans, and one's anthropology then determines one's sociology, how I order my society. Okay, so in the words of Dr. Wright, who is synthesizing the original premise of Dr. William Augustus Jones, Dr. Jones is articulating that one's theology, how a person sees God, then determines how they see humans, and then that determines how they order their society. Now, why is this important? This is important for the purpose of this discussion. I am going to argue and expand God as representing anything or anyone a person worships or idolizes. So again, I told you, I'm not a theology professor, but what I am saying is I am going to, in this lesson, I'm going to expand the comprehension of God as representing anything or anyone a person worships or idolizes. So why is that important in the intersectionality of theology and criminal justice? I'm glad you asked. The picture that you are looking at now is Elmina Castle, which is in Ghana, West Africa. The castle itself is the white part, but what you see with the building with the brown vertical stripes is a church. Now, Elmina Castle was built by the Portuguese in, I think it was 1648. Don't quote me, just look it up, okay? But in this church is where the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French will go into this church and worship their God and then come out and engage in the trafficking of humans, of the enslavement of free African people, okay? So the ramification is that I can believe in something or someone and worship it, and at the same time, that forms how I treat the people around me because I have established a hierarchy. So if I believe that my God are beliefs about patriarchy, about misogyny, about xenophobia, about transphobia, about whiteness, about anti-Blackness, then what I believe then sets the hierarchy for how I treat other people. It also sets the process for how, when I look at these people as less than, I have no problem setting up laws and procedures that go against them because I already think that they are inhumane in the first place. Okay, so why is this important? When we have a conversation about the criminal justice system in the United States, it is my argument that once you see your God, lowercase, whatever you believe, whatever you idolize, whatever you worship, think of the January 6th Capitol insurrections, where those people, their God was government. It was oppression. It was violence. Okay, it is my argument that when you look at the criminal legal system, that morality always comes before legality. What do I mean? What I mean is that what a person's morals are then precedes how they legalize those morals. So think about abortion. Think about same-gender loving marriages. Think about prohibition. Think about the enslavement of free African peoples. Think about interracial marriage, okay? In these examples, once people's morals begin to change, then their laws begin to change. So laws, in my opinion, or in my teaching, are a reflection of what and how people think. Okay, example, It used to be illegal for Black persons to be married to white persons. And then once the morals changed, then all of a sudden, now you have it legal based on Loving versus Virginia, another United States Supreme Court case that allows for there to be interracial marriages without the offending party going to jail. Another example, you remember a time when marijuana used to be illegal? Okay, well, here in the great state of Illinois, under certain exceptions, marijuana is considered to be legal. Why is that? Because the morality beliefs of the power said it was more beneficial to make it a recreational drug from which they could profit than it was for having persons to be incarcerated. And there is money in the privatization of prisons, but not as much money as it is legalizing marijuana. Okay, so once people's morality begin to change and say, you know what, marijuana is not that bad, then now it is an infusion into the law where now you can have marijuana. Okay, so when you think about the young man, when he says where the money resides, follow the money and you will follow the law. Okay, now we've gone through the first couple of learning targets where we talked about what are the components of criminal justice. We talked about the sources of criminal law. We talked about morality and legality, and we see that the two are not the same. So now we're going to go more into the specifics of what is a crime. So the illustration that I have up here is it's an equation. It's a visual equation, if you will. Okay. I want you, wherever you are, even if you think this is going to sound ridiculous, I want you to say these two terms in Latin, and you can impress all the people you want after this lesson. So the first term is called actus reus. I want you to say it. I can hear you. Actus reus, thank you. And then you have mens, say that term. I hear you, mens rea, okay? So what we call crime is really the addition of actus reus plus mens rea, okay? Now, as a side note, there are some crimes where you do not need a mens rea. There are crimes that are called strict liability crimes where you don't need to have a criminal mindset or thought at the time. If your action violates the law, then that is a crime. What is a great example? I'm glad you asked. In the state of Illinois, driving while your license is suspended or revoked, you only need the illegality. You only need the physical action, which is the driving. You don't need to know your license suspended or revoked. You don't need to have told anyone. You don't even have to really have had notice from the state of Illinois. If your key is in the ignition, if your car is on or off, if you are in actual physical control of your car, just driving or in actual physical control of your car, and your license is suspended or revoked, whether you know it or not, gives the police probable cause to arrest you and take you into custody. Did you know that? That's free legal advice. I'm gonna give it to you because I'm in a giving mood, okay? But aside from that, usually, in most cases, you have two elements. And I want to equate elements like ingredients, okay? When you are making a cake, you need certain ingredients and you need them rationed and measured in a particular way, because if they are not, you are either not gonna have a cake, you're gonna have cornbread, or you're gonna have a nasty ass cake because no one's going to eat it. They may love you, but if they, all of a sudden everybody is going to the trash can, you have not put in the proper ingredients or you have not measured it correctly, okay? So ingredients are to recipes as elements are to crimes. If you want to know what makes a crime, you have usually at least two types of elements. or ingredients. Actus reus, which is the physical action, and mens rea, which is the criminal mindset. In this image that you're looking at right here, the actus reus is the punching of the defendant, would-be defendant, to the unsuspecting person. We know he is surprised because look at his eyes. We can also infer or make a logical conclusion that he didn't want to get knocked out, okay? That he did not say, please, hit me, hit me, hit me. If he had given consent, then that would be akin to how you're able to play baseball, football, basketball, because these are mutually consenting sports. Now, that don't mean just beat my ass when you're trying to score, but what it does mean is that when I am an athlete, I am giving you consent that there is going to be some mutual physical contact. But in this situation, there is none. So the actus reus is the man with the physical action of punching this person in the face. His mens rea is evidence in the thought bubble, where you see in his mind, he has the outcome of what? Of trying to blacken the person's eye, trying to break or injure his nose, and trying to cause some type of cut on his face. So whenever you think of a crime, I want you to think of adding actus reus and mens rea. Here's another example. Actus reus and mens rea, when you put them together, that is the physical and mental elements of a crime. The action is the stabbing of the person, and the intent is what is the person's mental mindset at the time of the crime. All right, so here's the equation. The crime equals actus reus plus mens rea. Actus reus. Now, whenever I try to do visuals, because I understand that there is a spectrum of learning. Some people are tactile learners, they have to touch it. Some people are visual, they need to see it. Some people are oral, they need to hear it or speak it. This is the only image that I could find that had hands, mouth, and foot, because they thought I was trying to look up hand, foot, mouth disease. Okay, so you're just gonna get these speckled little images until I can create my own. Okay, so actus reus is a physical action. I usually teach in order to remember or look or think about the evidence of actus reus in any crime. What is done with your mouth, what is done with your hands, and what is done with your feet. What is done with your mouth? Are you giving directions or threats? Are you lying under oath? What is done with your hands? Are you taking something that you're not supposed to take that doesn't belong to you? Are you punching someone or threatening someone without their knowledge or consent? Okay, what is done with your feet? Are you at the scene of a crime? Have you trespassed into someone's house or their car? Are you running away from something? All of these are examples of actus reus, which is the first element or component of a crime. The second element or category was called mens rea. Okay, what is the mindset of the suspect or the defendant? Now, in the Model Penal Code, which is a collection of recommendations from the American Legal Institute, I think that's what they're called. They said, you know that the laws in Illinois are different than the laws in Nevada, which are different than the laws in Texas, which are different than the laws in the District of Columbia, which is different than the laws in Minnesota, okay? Because there is no unified criminal code. So what the Model Penal Code says is, okay, states, we are going to give you a list of suggestions, and these suggestions are going to describe different types of criminal offenses and different types of criminal mindsets. And then you get to tweak or copy or paste or cut or edit however you want in order to implement these laws into your state. So when you look at the different mental states, talking about capacities in different laws, there are 4 according to the Model Penal Code. And these words may be tweaked depending upon the state or the district or the territory you live in. Purposeful is when you're doing stuff on purpose. I know you're not supposed to use a word to define a word, but when there is intentionality, okay? In the state of Illinois, that is, well, really in all of these levels are going from most serious to least serious, because the way that it is concluded is that doing something on purpose, breaking the law on purpose, deserves the highest level of punishment or accountability one can get. And then with each level, it decreases in terms of severity of punishment. So you have purposely. In Illinois, there is also intentionally, which means did you intend, did you do this on purpose? Okay. And the second one is knowingly, meaning did you know or should have known that the intention to do the harm, that's the conscious intent to act in causing the harm. Did you know that if you were speeding through the street and police were behind you, that if you crash into a car, that was going to be, the outcome or the result, okay? Then you have recklessness. Recklessness is where you know there is a substantial and unjustifiable risk and you take it anyway. Recklessness is the case where the woman who was the conductor of the Blue Line, I think it was mid to late 2000s, she had been working a number of jobs for the CTA. And on this day, she fell asleep at the wheel while she was driving the Blue Line train. And the train ended up crashing into the escalator, and it ended up on the level where the passengers were. And so I don't know if she was charged criminally, but I know she and CTA were sued civilly because there were people who suffered injuries. Had she been prosecuted, she could have been prosecuted of the mindset of recklessness. Not that she intended to fall asleep, but that she knew she was sleepy, and instead of calling off or not driving the train that day, she took the risk of driving the Blue Line at that speed with those passengers. And that is what she would be charged with in terms of her mindset. The last one is negligence, okay? Negligence, which is you recognize that there is, a risk, and you just should have been a little bit more careful, okay? So remember, when you add actus reus and mens rea, that is criminal behavior. Also know that if you have actus reus in some situations, that results in criminal behavior. Now, I hear you saying in my sanctified imagination, well, what if you don't have mens rea? Okay, what if you have, what if you just have mens rea? I'll put it like that. That's what I was supposed to say. What if you have no actus reus? You just have mens rea. Well, then it is a position of me that you do not have a crime. What does this look like in real life? I'll give you a perfect example. When you're driving through town, and for some reason, the pandemic got people driving a little bit more crazy. And then all of a sudden, they speed out from behind you to come to the side of you, to cut in front of you, to then make a right turn. And if you're anything like me, where you have a special love language for people like that, and I said, I could kill this motherfucker, okay? Me saying I could kill is mens rea. And even then, it's more so just me being ticked off. But even if I created in my mind the ability to try and kill this person, and I don't do anything else, I can't be arrested just for thinking those thoughts. It usually has to be a thought and a substantial action, and they are integrated or added together. Okay, so now we have talked about all the stuff we talked about. So now we're talking about how crimes are grouped. Now, this is usually for all 50 states, territories, and the District of Columbia. You can group them a couple of ways. You can group them crimes against persons and then crimes against property. So crimes against persons, kidnapping, sexual assault, battery, domestic battery, robbery. Those are crimes against persons, murder. Crimes against property would be criminal trespass, arson. Those would be some examples. The way we categorize these crimes in court is by way of misdemeanors and felonies. Misdemeanors generally are crimes for which a person can be punished up to 364 days in jail. And in the state of Illinois, they are Class A, Class B, Class C misdemeanors. When we talk about felonies, felonies are serious crimes for which a person can be punished from 365 days or more in prison. And in some states, the sentence for a felony can include life in prison or the death penalty. In Illinois, we used to have the death penalty until the governor, not Pritzker, but I think it was Ryan, put a moratorium on the death penalty, which means he put a stop on it, which means that everyone who had been sentenced to death, now their sentence had to be commuted or recalculated or resentenced. In the state of Illinois, felonies are all numbers. Class 1 is the most serious, Class 2 is next, Class 3, Class 4. Now, I hear you saying, Natasha, on here it says Class X. You just said that felonies are only numbers. And I did. And I'm still not lying. In the state of Illinois, when you get to a Class X felony, that means you have reached the mothership of felonies. That means you're in the big leagues, okay? Class X felonies usually involve firearms, and they usually involve severity in injury or a specification of the type of person who is injured or harmed. Think a child, think someone living with a disability, think of a senior citizen, think of persons who are frontline workers. Those are all, according to Illinois law, they are classified in a different and protected class than, say, other people. So Class X, if you get a Class X felony, you are up there, okay? Class X felonies usually run from 6 to 30, 6 to 30 years in prison, okay? So now, here's another cheat sheet, excuse me. Misdemeanors and felonies. For misdemeanors, you could get supervision, which is like a non-conviction probation, where basically the court says, look, stay ass out of trouble for 3 months, okay? And don't do this no more. Then you have conditional discharge, which is where it is a misdemeanor conviction, okay? Then you have Class A, Class B, Class C, and you can see the different ranges of imprisonment in jail. Let me explain to you. There is a difference between jail and prison. Jail is usually for two groups of people. For those who have been charged with either a misdemeanor or a felony, and they are awaiting the disposition of their case by way of a plea or by way of a trial. That's the first group. The second group of people in jail are those who are serving misdemeanor sentences or misdemeanor punishments that can range up to 364 days in jail. Prison is different. Prison is for those who are serving out the time that they pled guilty to or were found guilty to for felony offenses, murder, sexual assault, possession of cocaine. Did you know that any possession of any amount of cocaine in the state of Illinois is a felony? So even if you have a little bit of powder, or you have maybe half of a gram or a gram or whatever, or gram, that might be too much, ounces, okay? It's the nature of the drug that makes it a felony, okay? So please be cognizant of that. Now, last thing is, how can a person be charged with a crime? In the state of Illinois, you have a number of ways. You can either get a traffic ticket or citation, or you can get a misdemeanor offense, which they write a complaint and they just give you a sheet and they say, Natasha has been charged with 720 Illinois Compiled Statutes 5/12-2, which is domestic battery. And they will say, this is how Natasha violated the law of, or committed the crime rather of domestic battery. In felony offenses, you can get charged two ways. You can get information, which is where you get summoned to court and then you are told what you are charged with, and there's a preliminary hearing and all that type of stuff. Or the prosecution can go to a grand jury and seek an indictment, which is where the grand jury listens to evidence from the prosecution and then decides, is there true bill or no true bill? Is there a true bill, meaning that there's enough evidence at this time to charge a person with an offense? Or is there no true bill, which is there is no evidence at this time that we feel exists to bring a charge against a person? Okay? Now, did we meet our learning targets? Look at me, 12:51. 12:51 p.m. Did we meet our learning targets? Did we articulate the three main components of the criminal justice system? Yes. Law enforcement, courts, corrections. Do you understand the sources from which criminal law originate? Yes. Written law, which is the legislature, common law, which is the judiciary, and then other sources like referenda or executive orders. Did we differentiate between morality and legality? Yes, we did. We started with the statement by Dr. William Augustus Jones in God in the Ghetto, his book, and we further synthesized it with how Dr. Wright looked at that statement and that belief more, which he said that how I see a God, and this is me talking now, how I see a God or my God then determines how I see humans, those with whom I interact. And then that determines how I order my society, how I put people in hierarchies, okay? So if I see a God as white male, then, or a cisgender, then I will put white male cisgender men at the top of my society, okay? If I don't see God as a Black transgendered woman, then I do not order or give preference or positions of honor to those who are Black transgendered women, okay? Did we identify the elements of a crime? Yes, we did. We talked about actus reus and mens rea. Did we explain the different types and categories of crime? Yes, we did. And to go back to the morality and the legality, how that intersects with criminal justice is, if you ever want to look at how the criminal justice system is supposed to work, I would say it's not broken. It is working exactly as it's supposed to. And that has its roots in, before something is legal, someone must have a change of heart and say, this is now my new morality. Also understanding that what is factually guilty and what is legally guilty are two different things, okay? Which, as an aside, this is why I do not speak for, now I can't think of the term, but the term is where you know that a person is guilty, but you decide that you are going to give a verdict contrary to that. I can't think of the term. It'll come to me, of course, after I'm off of here, okay? But understand, as I have said before, you don't ever know what evidence has been ruled inadmissible for whatever reason. So when you serve as a juror, or when you are listening in the well of the courtroom, you don't know what evidence has not been allowed in because of its unconstitutionality or its legality. So if you ever decide that you are going to ignore everything and do something else, you are doing it based upon half presented information to you, okay? Understand, when you are a juror in a trial, you are never, ever, ever going to hear everything, because everything has to be filtered through laws and rules of evidence. Okay? So, how do we stay in touch? I'm glad you asked. These are all the different platforms that I am on. You have YouTube, so go over there to that side of the internet and subscribe to Legaleaze, please. I am on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn under my government name, and then Facebook. We have my personal page, and then you have the Legaleaze, please Facebook page. If you want to invest in Legaleaze, please, there are 3 ways. And to keep it same in your mind, Legaleaze, please, Legaleaze, please. Those are always the handles. Legaleaze, please, for Zelle and PayPal is at gmail.com. Cash App is $Legaleaze, please. Okay. And if you ever want to invest, that is where you go to do so. Okay. So that is the end of class for today. I'm just going to go over and see if there are any comments, because as I'm teaching, I can't see, what you were saying and what you were not saying. All right. So I hope that this has made sense. I hope that you are able to, learn something from this. And this will be on my YouTube channel and Legaleaze page so that you can watch later on as often as you can. So click like, love, make sure that you share, make sure that you talk about this, because this is free, solid, reliable, good information that I am presenting to you. All right. So with that, I wish you a happy Friday. Please be safe and secure and warm wherever you are, whether you are in Brazil, whether you were in Turks and Caicos, or whether you are in cold ass Illinois. Okay, please be safe, and I will see you next week. All right, take care. Bye-bye.